Welcome back, everybody, to Clicks and Bricks, where every day we talk about business and technology. My name is Ken. Today is September 14th. Super excited to have our guest today, Angela Boss Lady Garland from Exit 11. Go ahead and bring her in, Sean. Oh, hold on one second. There we go. Now we're switched over. How you doing, Angela?
Doing great, thanks.
So I think we met in 1999.
Yeah.
I think this is probably the first time that we met, and you were, you had a building. We owned a building, and you kind of took over managing it, as I recall, and you were doing co-working space in '99, or you took over a floor of it, and you were selling co-working space into that. Is my memory correct there?
Yes, I was actually in 2000 working for another co-working shared office facility, always wanting to open my own, did some networking, and found out that you all had a building that had a .com that left, and it was already furnished, internet, conference room, reception area, everything I would basically need other than some new paint and carpet. And that was one of my first lessons in networking, is to ask for what you specifically needed. And I specifically needed an entrepreneurial landlord who understood what I was trying to do, because raising capital at that time was impossible.
It was a different world, and co-working space was kind of a pretty new concept, right?
Yeah, I mean, shared office space had been around. It's been around since the 60s. Like, attorneys would take on, each individual attorney would have a spot, and they'd share secretaries and conference rooms and stuff. But we weren't calling it co-working. We called it shared office space. It certainly didn't have the feel that we have now, but
yeah. And our company, River City Internet Group, our holding company, is Brian Matthews is our CEO, and he's wildly entrepreneurial. So we definitely love that entrepreneur. And we don't need to get into the structure, but I'm sure there was some kind of equity. Like, it was a very creative, probably situation to get started. And basically, you asked for something you probably thought you wouldn't get, and you found it, right? Because you just kept chugging, until you found that, which is awesome. And then we fast forward to today, and now you still in the co-working space. Is that correct?
Yes, a little bit.
Okay, so can you explain to the audience, what is Exit 11 as an entity? Like, what is it that you guys do? Because I think it's unique and different.
Right. So Exit 11 started as Exit 11 Workspace, which was the co-working center, and then I always knew we'd do specialty coffee, but not at the level that we ended up doing it. So then it became Exit 11 Workspace and Coffee House, because we put a full service coffee house inside the co-working center. The coffee part took off, and we were developing our own syrups and we're selling food, all kinds of crazy stuff. Then there was no place to park at the building where we were. And a lot of people didn't even know we were in there, because it's an office building. So, I guess there's no drive-through in Washington, Missouri, or anywhere in Franklin County for coffee drive-through. And there was a guy that would park a one-sided trailer at the VFW Hall in Wentzville, and people would drive. He just would go there. People would drive up till 10 a.m. and then he would drive back. So we're like, that's an interesting concept. And then I went to Seattle, visited my daughter, where every other block was these two-sided drive-through coffee stands. So when I got back, I thought, well, why don't we see if we could do a two-sided drive-through trailer, test a specific area or location, and if it works, then we'll build a brick and mortar and go from there. Well, so then we fit out this little two-sided drive-through trailer. We connect it to the city power and water, and we see 300 cars a day. So it ends up being this, we were literally parked on a gravel parking lot across from a graveyard in an abandoned gas station. Like, this lot had been sitting vacant forever. And so it was but similar to the building that we first started out with at Primary Network, it was off the beaten path. It wasn't a Class A building. There was nothing pretty about it, but it just proves that if you have really good service and you're providing something that people want, they will find you and come to you and recommend you. And so so then we realized, there's quite a bit of money to be made in this coffee drive-through business. As much as I like co-working, because co-working, it's easier, of course, because you rent an office or sell a membership and then you're done, essentially. I mean, you take care of the people, but
it's almost like a gym membership, but for office space.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I've been in and out of that industry since I was 19, because my mom was in the executive suite industry. So that's how I And it's very entrepreneurial. I mean, what I like about it is that even though you're doing the same job every day, you have multiple different, all kinds of businesses, from sales reps to attorneys to web developers to whatever. Right. So you're learning, so it's a great job for anyone has ADD.
Right.
So,
yeah. So
okay.
For the audience that doesn't know, Washington County, Franklin County and Washington are suburbs of St. Louis, right? And I think we might talk a little bit about going to, or not suburbs, adjacent counties. Right.
So Franklin County consists of, I think Pacific is in there, and Union, and Washington, Missouri. Right. So we started in Washington, Missouri.
St. Louis County, Franklin County is right next to St. Louis County.
Yeah.
Right. They share borders. So it's probably a 30-minute drive from where I'm at. I'm kind of middle central of St. Louis. On top of that, she had mentioned Primary Network, and Primary Network is a Hosterian subsidiary, a sister company of Hosterian. So our audience knows Hosterian. We don't talk about Primary Network very much on the show, but it is. We also have an internet service provider company that we own and operate as well. That's been around since 1999. It's a vastly different company today because we're not facilities based. We were facilities based when you knew us. And now we're just agents for the big telcos. But just clear that up a little bit. So can you tell us a little bit, because we talked right before the show about the difference in being in would you call that a rural county? It's starting to become rural, right? It's not an urban county, it's a rural county, if you had to define it.
Yeah, and Washington's about 13,000.
Right. So do you think that you had a specific advantage of testing a marketplace in a rural county versus a suburban or urban community?
I didn't know that when I first started, but it ends up being a benefit. So again, a friend of mine, Mandy, who used to be a partner in J Bucks, she was managing this building in Washington, Missouri, and working for the guy that owns it and doing some other things. And she said, I told the guy about your concept because I had been wanting to do this co-working model for decades, basically since I was in your building. When I would go to the Starbucks and I'd see people sitting in Starbucks meeting were renting space from me in the office building. I'm like, why aren't you sitting in the boardroom? They're like, it just feels more comfortable. We like the way it feels. It's more relaxed. So that's when I, back then, started thinking about there needs to be a hybrid coffee shop meets meeting center, office space, whatever. So was the dream. But then, of course, in those 20 years, went and worked full-time jobs, did consulting, whatever. So
right.
She always knew I had this dream. So she tells the guy that owns this building, he's got vacancies, and again, entrepreneurial, and said, right. Yeah, I think it would be a benefit to the building. And why landlords like this concept is because it incubates future tenants. So they outgrow this space and then they become a traditional tenant.
Right.
So I did not, other than her, I didn't know anyone in this market. So that was hard because if I had done it in St. Louis, at least I know a lot of people. But I learned about the Rotary, and I joined the Rotary, which of course threw me into the community, all in. And then we moved out here in 2017, so that helped. So lessons learned in a small community is if you're going to take money, you need to spend money in that community.
Yes.
So, and then become ingrained in that community and give to that community. And I think we end up being, for the coffee part of it and the co-working, because the guys in the city council say, oh yeah, Exit 11's like this, the WeWork of, Washington, Missouri. So it becomes like they feel special. Like, we get to have this cool concept here. And now we have a 2-sided drive-through, like with high-end specialty or organic, roasted locally, all that good stuff. It just feels like something really great going on instead of franchise or whatever else.
Right.
So.
And then I just want to go back for a second because you landed on something, you said it twice now, an entrepreneurial landlord. And just to remind, a tip for all the listeners, if you're going to go into business and you're going to do brick and mortar, the landlord that you choose to go with is vital, right? If you go with a big REIT, real estate investment group, I think it's a real estate investment
trust,
right? I hate working with REITs. They don't care about their tenants at all. They charge really high rates. They have this stuff built into their contracts where it's like, if they lower one person's rent, they got to lower everybody else's rent on a lot of times. So they just will not work with you on concessions for when you're moving in. So You just get you negotiate on your build costs, like whatever they're going to do, brought you for the build, and then so much many months free rent. But then after that, it goes skyrocketing. And I can't tell you, for me personally, how beneficial it's been to either one, own the building, which I think is the best, right? Because then you just don't have to answer to anybody but the bank, which can be a problem too, long term, short term sometimes. But you can usually work your way through those issues. But then a landlord that's just this, magical being in the sky that you never get to talk to, you just cut your checks. They're not very accommodating. And having an accommodating landlord could be the difference between making your company successful and not, right? And I think you found that multiple times. Have you had bad experiences with landlords?
No.
No?
I think that because when we opened the one out in Winghaven, I wasn't an owner in that. I was a consultant in that, but he again got it. He's like, this is a benefit to the building, and even if it ends up being a loss leader or whatever, it brings traffic to the building. It gives exposure to the building, and you always have to be thinking creatively. So I was introducing co-working to Washington, Missouri, even though I'm thinking it's this known concept. It's been in St. Louis. It's on the East and West Coast. I was like this alien who landed here in 2015, and they're like, what is this? What's happening?
Yeah.
And so I had to get creative with like hosting events and having people in and doing whatever. But I also had to tell the landlord, like, I have a property management background and my husband's really handy. Maybe we could do a little trade. I'll take over property management. We'll handle maintenance stuff and give us some concession on rent, or give us, a couple months. So he was very flexible, and it was a win-win, because he's like, oh, good. They're there on site protecting my asset. I don't have to worry about it. And it helped us to ramp up. And actually how we got into the coffee business was also a landlord thing, because he had invested in a restaurant in the same building.
Right.
And it was coffee, wine restaurant. And there was this beautiful espresso machine sitting down there, and because it's been closed for a while. And my husband went down there. He's like, I wonder if we could just get this thing to work. So we asked the landlord, say, can we just borrow this for a little bit? We're going to see if we can figure this out. And so Scott learned how to be a barista, and he watched every YouTube video and learned all the parts. And, he's really mechanical and handy. He's like a mad scientist, and he's figured this out. And that's how we got into the coffee business. And so again, it was looking for, it's like right around your opportunities, look and ask questions. The worst you could say is like, no, I want that sitting in that restaurant for forever. So he feels great about, because we were not in a position at that time to spend 10 grand on an espresso machine to test out whether or not we could be in this business. So
but you could have rented one too, right? You were lucky enough to have that opportunity present itself, and you took it. And I hate that I do this all the time. I talk to you about Matthew McConaughey's book Green Lights a lot, and that was a green light moment for you, right? You saw it and you said, hey, there's an opportunity. And then you guys executed on that potential opportunity. You had something, you saw it, you had a dream, and you went for it. And I think today people just are afraid to ask for things because I don't know why. Maybe they're afraid to be told no, or they think if they get it, they'll fail. Or
they're stubborn, in their own. Because I'm pretty stubborn, but I'm also impatient, and so, and I was protective over my little co-working concept and my, what I thought it was supposed to be. Well, it didn't end up getting to be that. I thought I would create these hybrid models, and what would be the thing I grew would be hybrid co-working coffee shop models all over, and find landlords all over. Well, what I'm ending up doing is opening up two-sided drive-through coffee stands. That's the business I'm in. And so, which is also very exciting, but I had to, they use the word pivot, but I literally had to pivot, had to change, had to say,
that's a 180. Cool. That's from co-working space to coffee shop. That's a pretty big, but Exit 11, you still have a co-working space, coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
So that still exists.
Now. Right. And we have about 4,500 square feet. I'm sitting in an 800 square foot meeting room that we rent out for trainings and workshops and all that. And then we have 10 private offices that are all rented to small businesses, coffee houses in the front of the house. And we have another 20 or 30 members that utilize that. Plus the public comes in. And then this is our corporate headquarters for the drive-through business, because we have our marketing and my HR
Is the drive-through business Exit 11 branded?
So it's Exit 11 Coffee. Yep. And so most people know us as out here now is Exit 11 Coffee, because that's where most of our customers, probably between all three drive-throughs see close to 600 people a day. So
awesome.
They know us as coffee.
Yeah.
So,
and then is the goal to expand that nationwide?
Ideally, I mean, I'd like to start, we're opening in St. Peter's in November, and then I'm hoping we've got an opportunity in Ellisville, Eureka. So it's, part of my challenge is getting out of the day-to-day. I think I mentioned that earlier, getting out of the day-to-day and making sure the baby's taken care of.
Yeah, so work on your business instead of in your business, which is hard to do, right? Especially when you're the creator, creating those standard operating procedures and then delegating that work off to somebody else and trusting somebody else. So is this do you own all the locations or are you franchising them out?
Right now we own all the locations, and we've talked to everyone from private investors to people that could help us franchise. And I hesitate on the franchise because we're not, I think somebody calls it a monkey do or something like that, where you could just press buttons. We're not, it does take about 140 hours to train someone. Right. Because they have to be, and they have to be a fully trained barista that knows how to stretch milk, not like press a button.
Right.
But,
and owning a franchise business and running businesses are two different companies, right? Selling and developing the franchise is one business, which I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, that's a whole business in itself, just managing the franchise and the franchisees versus managing the business itself, right? But I think you could go either way with this one, right? You could keep them independently owned or do the franchise model.
We grow slower by being privately owned, but there's got to be I got to figure out a way between franchise and us owning 100% where we do joint ventures that say,
right.
Because there's people all the time like, oh my gosh, I would love to do that.
Like something like what Steak and Shake's doing.
Yeah, like either a retired couple or a young couple that says, this is a great business. My husband works full-time or my wife works full-time and I'm going to run the coffee drive-through, and it's a nice. You
make an investment, you'll own a percentage, not the whole thing, and we work together. You'll get a salary and all that stuff, but then you'll get proceeds from your store. I really like the Steak and Shake model as a whole because it lets people be entrepreneurial without 100% of the risk, right? It's a shared risk between the entity.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that. Is this the new model?
The new model that Steak and Shake's doing, right? They got rid of general managers. That's why they all closed almost nationwide, right? They got rid of all their general managers because they didn't have any skin in the game. So a lot of the stores were just tanking, right? Just hire a GM, and then they're there for a year or two, and GM turnover in a restaurant I think is 1 to 2 years generally. But an owner operated stores were always really successful. So what Steak and Shake did is they said, okay, a $10,000 investment, you do 3 months of training, and then you get your store. Once you get your store, they give you a salary. Then you get a percentage of the proceeds for your salary and all that other stuff. But then you get to participate in 50% of the profits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Huh. So you're not really a 50% owner because if your store drops too much, they can fire you. But for the most part, for all intents and purposes, if you're going in and busting your ass and you're running a successful business, you're going to get a salary and participate in the profits. If you were a GM, you would just get fired if you weren't doing well. And in this case, you'll still lose your store, right? Because if you're the entrepreneur, you would either go under and find another job, or you would keep going back to the bank and digging yourself further into debt, which unfortunately happens to far too many entrepreneurs in this world. But I think they always find a way to dig themselves out long term. So, which is a crazy concept.
I think we call that grit. Those that can just say I am, or
yeah, I frequently call it faith and tenacity. Right, mm-hmm. I've got faith, and I'm not sure what my faith is in. Right, it's just that it's gonna work out. Right, we'll figure it out, and then tenacity is just just keep moving forward no matter what. And now, and you probably have. I've got like 40 families that are dependent on payroll from us, and I'm sure you've got now with as many stores quite a few, and then plus your co-working space, you probably have some kind of buy-in in their companies, right? Like I do with the hosting companies. Like I feel like I'm responsible for some of their success.
Yeah. Which
is a whole lot of fun when it's working. It's probably pretty miserable when it's not. And I know it's pretty bad for me too when something goes bad, but we definitely have more good days than bad days. So as we're wrapping up, we're about 20 minutes in. Do you have any business or life tips that you would like to share with the audience? Something that you do specifically, or something you've adopted through the years from other entrepreneurs to help you through Either those downstrokes in business that we have when we have those bad seasons, or just whenever you have a hurdle, like you want to accomplish something and you don't necessarily know how you're going to get there, but you could see yourself at the end. What are those tools that you use or tricks that you use to help you get there?
I think that you have to know, I believe you have to know all parts of the business. And the reason, when COVID hit, we've lost like a chunk of people all at one time. And actually back in May, we lost 200 hours a week of drive-through people. And so thank God Scott and I are trained baristas, because it's like, all right, here we go. And so I think what happens is so many people own a business and then they're dependent on everyone else to do functions that they don't even like. It'd be like me starting a technology company and trusting that you were going to do what you're supposed to do. And then one day you decide not to show up, I'm out of business. Right. So there was, there's pros and cons, of course, of knowing that, because then you tend to rescue more than you should. But that is what has saved me over and over in anything I've done, is saying, okay, the gal that answers the phone is sick or out for a week. Okay, I know how to work the switchboard. And right. So you just, it's having the humility to say, I'm not too good for anything. And I also think it helps that when you're in there, when I'm inside the drive-through with the ladies that I work with, I think it makes them feel good. Like, oh, and because I'm in there, I'm like, I've got the apron on, I'm doing exactly what they're doing. And it helps me appreciate. I'm like, this is freaking hard. And I'm like, why isn't this grill working? They're like, right. Like, okay, so we've got to make sure their tools are always up to speed. Or if the cups, I'm like, these cups, they bend. They're like, yeah, we've been telling you guys. I'm like, yep, you're right. So it really, what is that undercover boss when that show, when they have people go in, it's like, this is what you guys are putting up with. Well, doggone it, so it just helps. So that helps. And then there's a book called Scale or Fail that I recently read / listened to. And I can't remember what the third P is, but it's like, you have to, every week you need to play, plan, and I'm going to use the word perform, but that's not the other P. Right. There should be one day of planning, and I do that at home. It's like, no one's around, try not to do calls, but like, what's the week, what's the checklist, what we got to get done, etc. And then one day of being on or performing. So that's when I'm having meetings and I'm going to rodeo and I'm on and I'm seeing lots of people, but I'm not necessarily getting work done. Right. And then there has to be a play day. There has to be a day that you go play with grandkids, or you go out to lunch, or you go visit with a friend, and it has to be scheduled. I told my daughter, I'm like, I need to have Eli at least a half a day every week, and it's got to be on the schedule. Otherwise, I'm sure I would be this crazy workaholic, never go home person, because that is important to me. Yeah. Yeah.
My son's only 10 right now, and I know I don't see him enough. My daughter's 14, so I get home at 8. She's still up, and we can do stuff to 10, 11, even midnight sometimes. But my son's only 10, so I don't see him enough right now. I know, and I probably should schedule. We do have Sundays scheduled, me and my son. We hang out. The wife goes to work, and then my daughter goes to training, and me and the boy just hang out and play. We wrestle mostly. But so yeah, I understand the scheduling. I try to jam it all into one day, all those things all the time into one day. But my days, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. At least 4 days a week, and then I also work Saturdays. So I understand. I'm an in the trenches kind of worker too. I love it, and I think not as much here at Hosterian is in the day-to-day as it is important as it is my brick and mortar. I own the audience knows I own a boxing school, and it is different when I'm there than when I'm not there. And my wife works there too, which is a huge, like that. She's the general manager there. So, these small brick and mortar storefronts, which is at the end of the day, my passion. I really love, the American dream and everybody owning their own business kind of thing. But being owner operated, I think, is a huge difference. I know that I can walk into any business in the country and I just immediately I go to the bathrooms and I can tell if the managers have buy-in in the company or not. If you just by looking at the bathrooms, and you can literally ask, say, hey, is the manager and owner here too? And that almost 100% they're like, yep, he is, and he's probably in the back doing stuff. So you can definitely tell the difference when you're in an owner-operated business versus a non-owner-operated business. And I'm sure you see the ones you probably have one of your trucks that is less occupied by you than others, and it probably doesn't run as well. Yeah. Right? So that's the fear of franchising, right? Because you're giving up I think what you're really talking about, and I talk about this a lot, is defending your position in your market. Like, you've built this, and you have to defend it somehow, and you can defend it by either you being there or getting somebody that echoes your voice in there for you. But as we know, it's really hard in general to find someone to echo your voice. And in today's market, it's really hard to hire. I know in my industry, payroll has gone up by 33%. Are you seeing the same thing on your side?
I mean, minimum wage is like, I have to hire 37-year-olds because I can't, you know, I've everything from a 17-year-old to 37-year-olds out in the field. And it feels weird to me to pay the 17-year-old the same as the 37-year-old. So I've got to give her, even though they both are being learning how to be a barista, but there feels like, hey, they should get credit for life experience. But
yeah,
it makes it really difficult. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to pay a barista $15 an hour plus tips, plus. I mean, multiply that times 30 and, you know.
Yeah, I have offered jobs to people that I know the job didn't meet their expertise level. Right? And I've had to explain to him, and I feel bad when I'm explaining to him, like, look, I know that the pay that I'm offering you for this job has no reflection of what I think your value is, but it's for the workload that this job is. So, and I've actually gotten some great employees that way, that were, because the job had less stress than where they were, or was less physical. Like, so we get a lot of, we have a lot of tech guys in our, you know, frontline entry-level technicians that, you know, maybe came from Amazon. And they're like, yeah, I got to carry 40-pound boxes all day long. And, you know, they're always work. And we're a little more laid back here. And we have lifting for servers and stuff, but not nearly like, you know, warehouse stuff. So, you know, finding those advantages, like free coffee for some people might be, you know, I think the average Starbucks addict spends $2,500 a year on coffee at Starbucks.
We had a gal, because we go back to, like, not going back to, but a question about software and what we like.
Yeah.
Square can tell us how many transactions people have had and how much they've spent, which I love. And one gal last year came 405 times, and we were only open 360 days. like that is somebody who is, like, I mean, that's the kind of.
So you cannot hire that person.
I can't hire, no, because then we lose money. But,
yeah.
But I'm surprised at how many people, I guess, the more I'm in business and now finally doing something that's really fast growing, I think that people think like me, and I'm finally saying people do not think like me. And because I've provided opportunities for some of these young girls, I'm thinking like, okay, you are here, you're learning how to be a barista, but you can be a trainer. You can 5 years from now be vice president of marketing or training or new store openings, or
right. Or have your own 20 trucks.
Yeah, it's endless. But they don't see that because of either their age or upbringing or whatever, and then they get overwhelmed, and then they disappoint, and then so now I'm learning that okay, you could just take my phone here, and then we could I don't know, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, or they simply don't want it, which blows my mind. Like, you don't want to be your own, you want to be an employee. Like, people, it took me a long time to realize this, and I'm still struggling with it myself, of, not everybody wants to do what I do.
Right.
And
they want to go home at 4. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, why? What's there? Netflix? No, like, yeah. So it's taken me a long time, and I'm still realizing that what drives me is not the same thing that drives other people, and that's okay, because I've fallen in that same trap. Like, hey, you know, because I've always said my job is looking for opportunity and executing when I see it. Like, that's how I see my entire job, right? It doesn't matter where I'm at, if it's here or it's just my job in life. And when I offer people like, hey, you know, here's this opportunity, and they squander it, I used to get so mad. I don't anymore. I'm like, it's just not for them anymore. Like, this is not what they want to do. And if I'm going to preach happiness is the most important thing in life, and if you're happy at a 9 to 5, then I shouldn't hold that against you, or even scratch my head about why.
And we finally, I mean, I know there's personality tests, DISC profile and Myers-Briggs and all that. We're using something called Culture Index, and we've learned so much, because you tend to hire people that are like you. Like, oh, she's so talkative and she's nice, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, in the trailer, You do not want a chatty Cathy. You need someone who is going to perform,
Right.
and they're going to be efficient, and they're going to follow the system, and they're not going to break the rules. And that is the opposite of me, because I am messy Marvin, and I spill stuff, and I go too fast, and I talk. So it's
and you break the rules.
Right, I break the rules. I'm like, and then Scott will come back, my husband, because he's the trainer and the creator of the system inside. He's like, okay, you can't put that there. I'm like, yes, I can. So it just, I would be a horrible employee.
I'm a horrible employee.
So I realized that if everyone's like us, we would have chaos and it would be wackadoo and we'd never get anywhere. We need people that create structure, follow structure, are detail oriented, so that we can do what we do, which is forge the path that everyone is saying, come on, say, let's go, here we go.
Absolutely. So to wrap it up, the final question, I don't know if you touched on it already or not, if there's one piece of technology that really changed your business or helps you dramatically moving forward, besides just the internet, right? Because we all know the internet has changed the world. What would that be, and would you recommend that to other businesses?
Right. I don't know if I hate to say this, but I do. It's that we discovered Square right when we opened up the coffee shop, and we started to use that. And then they had a rewards program, and Square was somewhat new then too. And they called us and they're like, how are you getting so many people to sign up for your loyalty program? Because we were in a small town and people, they like those coupons and the $3 off. But that little thing has ended up that program not only helps us figure out how many cold cups and how many burritos we sold yesterday, and what the stats are from this day last year to today, but also keeps track of all of our loyalty members, how much they've spent, what they bought, when they're coming again. It does the email marketing newsletter. All of it's, there's things that I get frustrated about, because it's like, once you're in, it's like, oh, well, now that you're this size, it's going to cost you this much. But then when I weigh the costs of everything else that we'd have to do to separate, it makes sense. And so the reporting function. So I don't know how we would, by having that at the very beginning, all these credit card companies and banks come to us and they try to coax us away. I'm like, but can it do this, this, and this? And like, no, right. And it would all be separate. They wouldn't talk to each other. I love knowing we've created something called the Boss Club program. So if you've visited us 250 times or more, which of course we can track with this,
right?
It doesn't matter how long. It could have been in a year, it could have been over 3 years. You're now the boss. We send you a gift card that says, I'm the boss. I call the shots. They pull them. We preload it with money. You can continue to preload it. We'll give you a 10% discount. We send you free coffee. We send you tchotchkes, and you are now the boss. So when we see your card in the drive-thru, we're like, this is a person who loves us. So, and it reminds the girls and guys in the trailer to say, this is a special person. They are our best advocates. So let's make sure you know their name and their face and know that card. So it's been a really, I don't know what we do. I'm sure that people outgrow it at some point, but.
So I love Square, and for the audience, Square is a St. Louis company, right? Founded here in St. Louis by McKelvey. And was Dorcian part of Square as well? Maybe just an investor. But Jim McKelvey, a partner in Twitter, founded Square right here in St. Louis, and the headquarters are in St. Louis as well, I think, now. Phenomenal setup. I think, did I lose audio, Sean?
I'm still here.
Okay. Phenomenal setup, easy tools. I use it at our boxing school every day, and I love it because it's helped so many small businesses actually get started with taking transactions. Mobile transactions were extremely challenging prior to Square, and they completely changed the game. And a lot of guys are on their coattails right now trying to catch up. I've also used Square because if you use Square regularly, then there's also a potential for financing, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so it's a really great tool. After you got some history, Square knows how much money you bring in, so they can do really easy, low-interest loans right there through Square, and you don't even make payments back. They just take a percentage of your future sales, and you get to really play around with that. So it's a great tool, and we all know in business, we need capital to grow. We're all capital hungry. We always want to try the next thing and do the next thing. So Square, I think, is a huge tool, a huge asset for any business getting started. And I don't know when it stops, right? Because you can do all your inventory tracking, all those things. So I guess more specifically, the tip would be a solid point of sale system and inventory management system. And Square is a great one, but there's a lot of them out there that you could choose from.
Yes, and make sure that it says the marketing feature on that is really the fact that we can talk to the people that were just there today, and they can give us immediate feedback. And
yes, it's a great tool. It's a phenomenal tool.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else you'd like to share with the audience, Angela, before we go for the day?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that the value of this connection between you and I is networking. I mean, it really is. Yes. I know that I don't know if people think that's a bad word, but it's absolutely the human contact and having face-to-face conversations and getting to know people and what their businesses are is how you grow. Because once I understand exactly what you're doing, I can tell other people and vice versa. And that's how I've gotten everywhere from the very beginning until here. I mean, the fact that Mandy, who met me 10 years before that at a women's president's organization meeting, right, called and said, "You still have that idea, don't you?" So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and then just having those contacts, and people tell me that I'm brilliant all the time, and I think they're fools. It's just because I happen to know, I remember, oh, this person's doing that over there. Like the simple stuff like, oh, do you know an electrician? Yeah, I know 30 electricians. You know somebody that, does X, Y, or Z, or an IT technician, or a blockchain person, or, all this stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I know somebody that does that. And they, just by recommending somebody that's good, I become a genius, right, which is also phenomenal for me as well. So, all right, folks, I think that's it for today's show. If you have any questions, comments, anything along those lines, feel free to reach out. If you'd like to join my text line community, it's 314-370-2871. If you send me a text message, any question you got, I will do my best to answer it. And I will not try to sell you anything on that text line community. I'll send you 1 to 4 texts a month. Probably crypto news is generally what I do, but it's also tips and tricks that I come across along the way. And we got to pay the bills. Today's episode is brought to you by nlink.com. Rapport made easy. My nlink.com account is nlink.com/Ken. It's got all my social media profiles there. I have one URL to give out, and everybody has access to all of my different social media profiles. So I can put that one URL on my business card, and you got my TikTok, and my Instagram, and my Facebook, and all those fun things. So that's it for today, folks, and get to work.